Have Charlie, 6 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. The question of why we are here is really about the decision to take a $900 million and transfer it to a third-party organization that has very close connections to the Trudeau family and Mr. Morneau. And we learn now this morning that that money was transferred to a real estate holding company of which in all my years in Parliament, I've never heard of anything that's how we do business in this country. So, Mr. Brown, I want to ask you a bit about the real estate holdings of We Corporation, We Charity. You know, my daughters were involved with Free the Children when they were young. It seemed like a really great grassroots organization. I can't keep track of the multiple corporate entities that have grown up around the Kielburgers, some transparent, some very murky. Can you sort of place their real estate holdings in context of where they are as an organization?
Mr. Angus, I'm going to try to limit myself to what we've reported already. As you have pointed out, the many different entities which hold real estate, both for WE's private companies, for their various charities, holding companies, the Kielburger family themselves, relatives of the Kielburger family, is incredibly complicated. Some colleagues of Canadaland at other news organizations have been doing a terrific job of beginning the work of untangling all of that, and Canadaland will have some information on that soon, but I hope you'll respect the practice of journalism as such that before we have things completely nailed down, I hesitate to comment here what I wouldn't report through our news organization.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm going to refer to one of your articles where your interview with Charity Intelligence, where they said the fact that the We Group were holding so much real estate debt that was in the terms of short-term on-demand loans was a huge, huge red flag. So my question would be, one, is that unusual for a charity? And do you think that put a lot of financial pressure on the Kielburgers in terms of these short-term real estate debts that they were holding?
Yeah, so I can speak to that because having interviewed Kate Bain of Charity Intelligence, she told Canadaland that she'd never seen anything like this, that she likened the way that We was leveraging itself, the We Charity was leveraging itself to somebody with a credit card with a $10,000 limit who was constantly at $9,500. This was short-term, on-demand loans, revolving debt. And given that the We organization the We Charity was investing so heavily, so rapidly in Toronto real estate, it to her eye as an independent auditor, I believe the phrase was massive red flags were raised as a result of what she saw in their audited financials. And in the audited financials, something popped out at me. The auditor brought up the responsibility of management for assessing the organization's ability to continue as a going concern in light of the breach of these bank covenants 2 years running. And the auditor, the auditor that We Charity chose to audit their financials said that unless management either intends to liquidate the organization or to cease operations or has no realistic alternative but to do so, they must maintain this responsibility to keep this going. This is a very sober warning that was not routine. There was nothing like it in their previous financial statements. And one thing that we did point out in our reporting is that when We Charity was in this seemingly very precarious financial situation, that's when the amount of money flowing out of the charity into Mark and Craig Kielburger's private company increased sharply the last 2 years, up to I think 8%. And then 7% in the last two years. Prior to that, We Charity was moving money to this private company, but at a rate of about 2% of the revenues. When you consider that this is in the neighborhood of a $60 million charity, 7-8% of charitable revenues is a significant amount of money.
Okay, that's very interesting. So we know that they were having to pull money out of the charity into their private corporation. We know that there was defaults on the bank covenants. These red flags are being raised, and then COVID hits, and their business model, which is mass rallies backed by corporate sponsors, is wiped out. I'm wondering if this would have created a financial crisis that precipitated their attempt to go to the government to get a program. So that's the first question. But then the fact that the government agrees to funnel the money through the real estate holding company, would that have been done to stabilize the debts so that they didn't have to liquidate their real estate assets?
To your first question, I think that's a terrific line of inquiry that we are pursuing as well. It's not something I'd speculate on. To your second, I know what you know from the terrific Global News report today, which is that by WE's own description, they set up this other entity, this new entity, for exactly that reason, to limit their liability. I would just add to committee that WE has brought up the impact of the pandemic on their charitable operations. I do not doubt that it was significant. Canadaland has not been able to independently verify that the financial trouble at WE is solely based on the pandemic, and the breach of the bank covenants precede the pandemic.
We will have to move on. Sorry, we're out of time.